The wind coming off the coast that afternoon was sharp and constant, tugging at the collar of my jacket as I stepped out of the cab. The hotel loomed over the shoreline like a forgotten relic, clean, quiet, and empty enough to make me wonder if I'd made the right decision coming here. That was the point, though. I hadn't come for luxury or comfort. I came to disappear for a while. My name is Marshall. I was 29 and fresh off the worst kind of heartbreak. The kind that doesn't just leave you alone, but leaves you questioning whether you were ever truly seen in the first place. I had taken time off work, ignored the concerned texts from friends, and booked the cheapest room I could find on the edge of a town that barely had a heartbeat. I didn't want noise. I didn't want distraction. I just wanted silence and maybe sleep. The lobby was quiet, save for the dull hum of the ceiling fan and the faint sound of elevator music bleeding from hidden speakers. I approached the front desk, waiting behind a tall man in a suit who seemed to be arguing about the minibar. I was only half listening, eyes drifting to the corner near the entrance where a skinny teenage boy was fumbling with his room card. He couldn't have been more than 18 or 19. Long limbs, too long maybe, hunched shoulders under a faded green hoodie, and a battered duffel bag slung over one shoulder. His hair was a mess, somewhere between tousled and neglected, and his expression was pinched with frustration as he tried, again and again, to swipe the car against the lock on the side entrance. It kept blinking red. No success. I don't know why I noticed him. Maybe it was the way no one else did. People walked past him like he was furniture. The receptionist ignored him. The concierge stared right through him. Even the security guard at the far end of the lobby didn't blink when the boy muttered something under his breath and kicked the side of the door. I'd been invisible like that once. Maybe still was. He glanced over and caught me staring. There was no challenge in his gaze, just a flicker of tired recognition, like he was used to being noticed for the wrong reasons. I looked away quickly, stepping up to the desk as the suited man walked off in a huff. The check-in process was uneventful. Room 407. One queen bed. No minibar. I nodded through the information, took the key card, and turned to head toward the elevators when I saw him again. He was standing near the vending machine now, tapping his fingers against the glass like he couldn't decide what he wanted, or like he didn't have the money for any of it. I hesitated, then walked over. "Hey," I said quietly. "You all right?" He looked up. Up close, he looked even younger. Pale skin, eyes like faded denim, with dark circles underneath. There was a fresh scrape across his knuckles, and his fingers trembled slightly as he shoved them into his hoodie pocket. "Card's not working," he muttered, nodding toward the side door. "Room key, I asked the lady at the desk twice. She just told me to try again. You staying here alone?" I asked, more out of concern than curiosity. He nodded, supposed to meet someone. They didn't show. There was a pause. I considered just walking away. He wasn't my responsibility, but something about the slouch of his shoulders made it impossible to do that. I gestured toward the main elevators. "Come on, let's get you upstairs. You can try the door from the hallway." He blinked, startled by the offer, then nodded again and followed without a word. We rode the elevator in silence. The kind that wasn't exactly comfortable, but not uncomfortable either. He stood pressed into the corner, like he didn't want to take up space. I stood opposite, watching the floor numbers tick up. When the doors opened, I let him go first. His room was at the end of the hall. He swiped the card. Red light again. I reached for it gently. "Let me try." He handed it over without protest. I wiped the strip with the edge of my shirt and tried again. The light flashed green. The lock clicked open. He stared at it like he'd just witnessed a miracle. "Sometimes I just need a clean swipe," I said with a small shrug. He didn't answer, just stepped inside, dropped his duffel on the bed, and turned to face me. There was something fragile in the way he looked at me, something quiet and grateful. "Thanks," he said. "For that?" "No problem." "I'm Calder," he added after a beat. I nodded. "Marshall." He gave a half smile, barely there, and then it faded. "People don't usually help," he said quietly. "They just look away." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just offered a nod and backed away from the door. "Well, hope your trip gets better." He watched me like he wanted to say something else but didn't know how. In the end, he just nodded and let the door close. I stood in the hallway for a second longer than I needed to, then turned and walked toward my room. My feet felt heavy, my thoughts heavier. I told myself it was just a random moment, a strange encounter with a quiet kid in a nearly empty hotel. But something about Calder lingered, like the taste of salt in the air, sharp and sudden and hard to forget. I closed my door behind me and leaned against it, staring at the ceiling. He was just a boy, just a stranger. But something about him made me feel like I hadn't vanished completely. The next morning, I wandered into the hotel cafe around 10, hoping the coffee was stronger than the silence that clung to my room. It was a kind of place where the furniture looked newer than the food, with light jazz echoing softly from hidden speakers and a handful of guests scattered like punctuation marks in a nearly blank space. I took a seat near the window, out of habit more than preference. The sea was visible just beyond the hedges, flat and gray beneath a cloud-heavy sky. I had just wrapped my hands around a lukewarm ceramic mug when I noticed him again. Calder. He was alone, seated at a table for two against the far wall. His hoodie had been traded for a threadbare t-shirt, sleeves pushed up to his elbows, revealing arms that looked like they hadn't known warmth in a long time. A sketch pad lay in front of him, a pencil caught between two fingers, but he wasn't drawing. He just stared at the page, brows furrowed like the paper owed him an answer it refused to give. Something in me hesitated. I told myself to leave it. He didn't need company, and I wasn't looking for it. But my feet had a mind of their own, carrying me across the cafe before I could think better of it. Mind if I join you? I asked gently. Calder blinked up at me. There was a pause, then a small shrug. Sure, it's not like anyone else will. I slid into the seat across from him. For a moment, we didn't speak. He went back to pretending to sketch. I sipped my coffee. The silence wasn't awkward, but it was thick, like something suspended between us. You draw a lot? I asked eventually, nodding toward the pad. When I can, he replied, flipping the page as if to hide whatever he'd just been working on. It helps. I mean, it doesn't fix anything, but it keeps me from unraveling completely. I nodded. I understood that kind of coping. He didn't look at me when he said, "My brother was supposed to meet me here. We haven't seen each other in over a year." I asked. He bailed. Said something came up. Texted me at midnight. Didn't even call. Calder's mouth pulled into a bitter line. Figures, right? I bought the ticket with money I didn't have. Thought maybe he'd care enough to show. His voice didn't shake, but there was something hollow beneath it. The kind of disappointment that comes after the anger is already burned out. I knew that feeling too well. "I'm sorry," I said, because it was the only honest thing to offer. Calder finally looked at me then. Really looked. You ever feel like the world just forgets you exist until you mess up? Like, no one notices until you're loud or broken. All the time, I said, and something passed between us in that moment. Recognition, maybe. Not of the details of each other's lives, but of the bruises left behind. He leaned back in his chair and ran a hand through his hair. "You here alone?" "Yeah," I said. "Needed to get away." "From what?" "Someone who stopped seeing me long before they left." Calder offered a knowing smile. Same chapter, different book. We sat with that thought, letting it settle between us like dust. Eventually, I asked, "How old are you?" 19, he said. "I turned last week. Didn't celebrate. Didn't really seem worth it." That made my chest ache more than I expected. There was something painfully earnest about the way he said it, like he genuinely believed no one would have cared. "Everyone deserves to be celebrated at least once a year," I said quietly. Calder smiled again, softer this time. "You're kind. Most people aren't." "I'm not most people." "No, you're not." That silence came back, but it was different now. Easier. Familiar. He picked up his pencil again, started sketching something new. I didn't ask what it was. Some things are better left untouched. As I got up to leave, he glanced up and said, "You know, you don't talk like someone who wants to be alone." I paused. Maybe I don't want to be. I just forgot how not to be. He nodded slowly, thoughtful. "If you're around later." I'll be by the pool. If you want to not be alone for a bit. I met his gaze. Yeah, maybe I will. Back in my room, I set my coffee on the nightstand and stood at the window, staring out at the empty chairs circling the pool below. Calder was already there, sprawled on a lounger, sketchpad balanced on his knees, eyes on the sky. I didn't know what this was. A connection? A coincidence? Or just two broken people finding a sliver of comfort in each other's silence? But whatever it was, I didn't want to lose it just yet. That evening, the sun dipped behind a wall of clouds, bleeding orange and violet into the sea. The wind had shifted, gentler now, but laced with something electric. I found Calder near the pool, right where he said he'd be, reclining on a lounge chair with his sketchpad resting flat on his lap. He wasn't drawing this time, just staring at the horizon like he was waiting for something to make sense. He looked over as I approached, his eyes catching mine with quiet relief, like I'd shown up to keep a promise he didn't dare ask me to make. I sat beside him without a word. For a long while, we just listened to the ocean. "Do you ever think," he said eventually, voice low, "that maybe some people aren't meant to be remembered?" I turned to look at him, trying to read the space between his words. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged, his fingers fiddling with the edge of a page. "I think I used to try too hard to be unforgettable. Then I started to wonder if disappearing might hurt less." There was no performance in his voice, just weariness and honesty. I recognized both like old friends. "I think people who feel invisible are usually the ones worth seeing," I said. "They just haven't met the right eyes yet." Calder smiled barely. "Yours seemed to work fine." We sat that way for a while, him watching the sky, me watching him. There was a softness about him tonight that hadn't been there before, like something had cracked open in him after too long sealed shut. He turned his body toward me, legs folded underneath him. "You ever miss someone who's still alive?" "All the time," I said. "My ex used to sit across from me every morning, drinking coffee like we were strangers. That was worse than any breakup." Calder nodded slowly. "I think my mom did that. Stopped seeing me long before I ever left." His words hit with more weight than he likely intended. He reached into the sketchpad and tore out a page. After a moment, he handed it to me. It was a rough pencil drawing, me, standing in the hotel lobby, shoulders tense, eyes hollow. Somehow, in a few quick lines, he'd captured everything I hadn't said out loud. "I draw people I don't want to forget," he said softly. I held the page, trying to speak past a knot in my throat. "Thank you." Calder shrugged like it wasn't much. "You're the only person who's looked at me like I wasn't a burden." There was silence again, deeper this time, and something inside that quiet made the air feel different. Charged. He shifted closer. Not enough to invade, but enough to feel. Our knees nearly touched. "Is this weird?" he asked, barely louder than a whisper. "No," I said, and I meant it. His hand grazed mine, hesitant, like testing the temperature of water. When I didn't pull away, he laced his fingers with mine. They were cold, slightly trembling, but they fit, naturally, like something that had been waiting to happen. We didn't speak after that. We just sat there, hands intertwined, breathing in sync with the tide. The pool lights flickered above us. Somewhere inside the hotel, a door slammed. Distant voices laughed. But here it was just us. "I don't want to mess this up," Calder said suddenly. "Whatever this is." "You're not," I replied. "You don't know me," he said. "I'm getting there." He looked at me then, really looked. His expression was open, raw, almost afraid. "I don't know how to be wanted without doing something to deserve it." My chest tightened. "You don't have to earn being seen." He looked down at our hands, then back up. "Promise?" "I promise." He leaned his head on my shoulder. We stayed that way until the wind picked up again and the sky turned black. Later, walking him to his room, we passed under a flickering hallway light. His hand brushed against mine again, but this time he let go before we reached the door. He paused outside it, glancing at the keycard in his hand. Then back at me. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For being gentle." I didn't have a reply. Just watched as he slid the card to the lock and disappeared behind the door with one last glance. I returned to my room and stared at the drawing he'd given me. Lines and shadows pulled from memory into something that felt sacred. I'd come to this hotel to forget someone. Instead, I was starting to remember who I was before forgetting ever started. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. The storm came suddenly, sweeping in from the ocean with a roar that rattled the window panes. Rain pelted the glass in hard, rhythmic pulses, and thunder cracked the sky in jagged bursts. I had just turned off the bedside lamp when the knock came. 3 urgent raps, not loud, but sharp enough to make me sit upright. I opened the door to find Calder standing there, soaked to bone, his hoodie clinging to his narrow frame, hair plastered to his forehead. He looked small, startled, and for the first time since I met him, afraid. "Sorry," he said quickly, shivering. "Power's out. The wind broke something near my window, and I didn't want to be alone." I stepped aside without hesitation. "Come in." He entered slowly, water dripping from his sleeves onto the carpet. I handed him a towel from the bathroom, and he wiped his face, teeth chattering softly. He didn't speak again for a while, just sat on the edge of the bed, towel pressed to his chest, like he needed to hold something to stay grounded. Outside, lightning illuminated the sky in fractured flashes. The power outage had left everything dim. The room was lit only by the soft orange flicker of the hallway emergency light spilling through the doorframe. "You okay?" I asked, sitting beside him. He nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just storms mess with my head." I didn't push. I just let the silence hold us. Eventually, Calder turned to me, his expression softer, tired. "Is it weird that I feel safer here?" "No," I said. "Not weird at all." He laid back on the bed, one arm flung over his eyes, exhaling slow and deep. "You don't talk much," he said after a moment. "I talk when I have something worth saying." He smiled faintly. "That's rare." I laid beside him, not touching, just present. The room was still, the storm less aggressive now. Calder's breathing slowed. His voice came again, quiet. "When I was 13, I used to lie awake and imagine someone like you. Someone who wouldn't leave the second I made things complicated." His words struck something buried in me. "You're not complicated," I said. "You're honest. There's a difference." He turned his face toward me, eyes searching. What if I'd been honest in all the wrong ways? "Then we start over," I whispered. "From right here." We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. Instead, he reached for my hand under the covers, fingers intertwining with mine like they had the night before. We lay there quietly, the storm easing above us. And eventually, Calder fell asleep. I didn't. Something in me had shifted. A tension I hadn't realized was still living in my chest. There was comfort in his presence, yes, but also something delicate, fragile, like a thread stretched too tight. I wanted to believe it was safe to hope that whatever this was forming between us was real. But morning doesn't always arrive gently. When I woke, the bed beside me was empty. The air was dry now. Sunlight filtered through the curtain, casting slanted patterns across the floor. Calder's towel was gone. So was the sketch pad he always carried. I sat up quickly, scanning the room for a note, a message, something. Nothing. I checked my phone. No new texts. No missed calls. My chest tightened with the first sting of panic. I opened the door, hurried down the hall to his room, knocked, waited. No answer. At the front desk, the clerk gave me a curious look when I asked. "Guest in 516, she said, typing quickly. "Checked out this morning. Around 6. Left with another gentleman. Tall, dark hair, black car." I stared at her. "Do you have a name for the guest he left with?" "Sorry, I don't. Reservation wasn't in his name." Back in my room, I paced for a while. Anger rose quickly, tangled with confusion and something deeper. Hurt, sharp and immediate. Had I misread everything? Was I just a moment of convenience? A safe place to rest until something better arrived? Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. I didn't know how to explain. I thought I could handle it alone, but I was wrong. I didn't mean to disappear like that. You were more than I expected. I'm sorry. No name, but it didn't need one. I stared at the message for a long time, typed a dozen replies, deleted them all. That night, I sat by the pool alone, sketch in hand, tracing the lines he'd drawn of me. I wondered if Calder had ever intended to stay, or if he was always halfway gone. Maybe he had been honest in the ways he knew how. Maybe I had been foolish to believe that someone so broken could stay anywhere for long. But still I missed him. That part, at least, was simple. The gallery was colder than I remembered. Glass walls framed the city skyline, and soft white lights bathed the space in sterile calm. Abstract canvases dotted the walls. Calder's work unmistakable. Lines that bled into curves. Faces obscured in motion. Emotion trapped in smears of charcoal and paint. I wandered past each one, heart clenched in slow pulses, afraid I'd find myself reflected in them and terrified I wouldn't. Then I saw it, tucked in the corner, behind a pillar, deliberate, hidden like confession, a sketch of me, the one he'd started that night during the storm. Finished now, fully formed. He'd draw me sleeping, hand under my chin, the softness of my mouth caught mid-dream. But the look in my eyes, closed as they were, felt heartbreakingly exposed. It wasn't a portrait. It was a goodbye. A voice broke the silence. I didn't think you'd come. I turned. He stood a few feet away, dressed in black, hair slicked back like he'd tried to be someone else. But his eyes, storm-colored and still too young to hold everything they did, gave him away. I almost didn't, I said, voice low. Calder didn't move. You got my message. I nodded. I didn't expect a reply, he said. I didn't send one. His shoulders dropped slightly. A sigh, maybe, or relief, or resignation. I wasn't lying, you know, not about how I felt. Then why did you leave with him? He flinched, but didn't look away. Because I owed him answers. Because I thought running would fix what I broke with him. And I didn't want you to see that part of me. So instead, you made me watch you disappear. He blinked, swallowed. Yeah, I did. We stood there in silence, strangers again. Behind him, another canvas loomed, a self-portrait, but fragmented, his face in pieces, overlapping, none of them quite whole. Who was he? I asked. My ex, Calder said quietly. We ended badly. He showed up and offered closure. I thought if I could finish that chapter, I'd be free. Are you? His mouth lifted at one corner, not quite a smile. Not even close. I moved toward the sketch of me. Why did you draw this? Because I didn't want to forget the first time I felt safe. The words landed heavier than I expected. I stared at the image, wondering how someone could make me look more loved than I'd ever felt in real life. I hated you for a minute, I confessed. You made me believe something, then you ripped it away. I hated myself longer, he said. I was scared of how easy it was with you, of what it meant. We faced each other now, nothing between us but air and regret. He stepped closer. I'm not good at this, he murmured. I ruin things. I leave before I'm left. I'm still here. Calder's throat moved as he swallowed, hard. His hand twitched at his side, like he wanted to reach out, but didn't trust himself. I'm not asking for another chance, he said. I'm just asking you to believe that what we had, that night, that silence, it wasn't pretend. I know it wasn't. We stood there in the pause between forgiveness and farewell. I didn't move. Neither did he. Then softly, like it hurt to say, he asked, Do you think we could try again? Slow this time. No storms. Just days. I took a breath. The part of me still raw wanted to turn away, to keep my pride intact. But another part, a braver part, wanted to find out what it meant to stay, even when it was easier to run. I don't need perfect, I said. I just need real. He looked at me like I'd just offered him a lifeline. Then I'll start there, he said. With real. We didn't kiss. We didn't promise forever. But his fingers brushed mine as we walked past the sketches, side by side, into the evening light. And maybe that was enough for now, because this time he didn't let go.